We come together to remember our beloved Goldye Cooper, Glassman, Zichrono Livracha, a beloved resident at Menorah Park, such a wonderful and special human being. The family was kind to spend time together at Menorah Park to help capture some of the beautiful picture of Goldie's life and all that she accomplished. And I had family members calling me, I guess from around the country, some who wanted to be here and some who are watching us via, I understand, the web to participate. At this time, it's traditional that we accept the Almighty's judgment. So I would ask the mourners to come forward, and we'll recite the blessing, Dayan HaEmet, together. Ashes Chayil, written by Solomon, of course. A woman of valor who can find? She is more precious than pearls. Her husband places his trust in her, and so he profits. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She invests herself with strength and makes her arms powerful. She stretches out her hands to the machine as her palms hold the spindle. She opens her palms to the poor and extends her hands to the needy. She has no fear of the snow, for all her household is dressed in fine clothing. Distinctive in the assembly is her husband, where he sits with the elders of the land. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and a lesson of kindness is on her tongue. She is robed in strength and dignity, and she joyfully awaits the future. She looks after her household and never tastes the bread of laziness. Her children arise and praise her. Her husband, and he lauds her. Many women have excelled, but you excel them all. Grace is elusive and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears God, she shall be praised. Give her the fruits of her hand, and let her be praised in the gates by her very own deeds. In Psalm 91, traditionally that we also say in the cemetery as we bring our loved one to rest, whoever sits in the refuge of the Most High shall dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. I say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God, I will trust in Him. For He will deliver you from the ensnaring trap. With His pinion He will cover you, and beneath His wings you will be protected. Shield and armor is His truth. You shall not fear the terror of night, nor of the arrow that flies by day, nor the destroyer who lays waste at noon. Let 1,000 encamp at your side, and 1,000,000 at your right hand, but to you it shall not approach. You will merely peer with your eyes, and you will see the retribution of the wicked. Because you said, the Lord, you are my refuge, you have made the Most High your dwelling place. No evil will befall you, nor will any plague come near your tent. For His angels He will charge concerning you, to protect you in all your ways. Goldye Cooper, December 15th, 1920 to January 12th of 2020. Golda was born on the 4th day of Teves. We looked it up in the Jewish calendar. right after Hanukkah, she came into this world. Her name was Goldye Glassman. I thought it was a beautiful alliteration. 2 Gimels. That's the winning number on the dreidel, the Gimel. And here she comes with the taste of latkes in her family's mouth. Still, she comes into the world right after Hanukkah. Goldye Glassman. And in Hebrew, 2 Gimels are a very important word. We know, of course, Gag. What is a Gag? A Gag is a roof. Gimel, Gimel. A roof that protects, so to speak. And that's who she was, really. A great, great protector, a matriarch of the family. She passed away at Menorah Park with her loved ones near her bedside. And she is really missed by our community so much. The loving mother of Marlene and Jonathan, Janet and Ricky, and Michael. And Michael, I was so stunned to see that you're named for both of your mother's parents, grandparents, in other words. I believe, because in the records it says their father was Michael, so that Jesse and Herschel, their fathers had the same name, Michael. So that's such a special name you carry, the name of Herschel's father, and also Jesse's father. So her son Michael, devoted grandmother of Alice, Laura, Carla, Evan and Eric, Melanie, Emily, Andrew, Abraham, great-grandmother of 11, dear sister of the late Milton Meyer, Benjamin Glassman, Paula Glazer, Marion Hirsch, Nora Rothman, Shirley Mullif, and Ruth Splaver. Goldie was born December 15, 1920 in Cleveland to Jesse and Harry Glassman. She was a lifelong resident of Northeast Ohio. At a young age, she and her younger siblings stayed at the Belfair Jewish Children's Bureau, formerly the Jewish Orphans Home, during the Great Depression. She worked selling laundry products over the phone for her brother-in-law until learning to drive at the age of 40, and then began a long career with Sun Life Insurance Company as an insurance salesperson. She was president of the Sisterhood at Temple Ner Tamid and volunteered at the East Lake Senior Center, where she walked to meetings at the former Taft Elementary School, weather permitting. She was an avid craftswoman, skilled at knitting, doll making, crocheting, and sewing. Most importantly, her generous and kind spirit were an inspiration to all who knew her. It's very special, of course, and that was from the obituary that I thought was so important to read. I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the important things that the family and I talked about, and then we're going to be fortunate to hear from family members. I think Jonathan will introduce everyone, right? Okay. So Goldie was born to Harry and Jesse Glassman, and Jesse's maiden name was Alan, and Harry's Hebrew name was Tzvi Herschel, and his father was Michael, as we said. And Jesse's Hebrew Yiddish name was Zisa. And her father as well was also a Michael. They were married, Harry and Jesse, in the late 1800s. They had a hosiery store on East 105th Street. And Jesse helped Harry and worked very hard to support the family. Their children were Meyer, Ruth, Marion, Benjamin, Goldie, Paula, Milton, Nora, and Shirley. Goldie lived at 105th Street, and at age 11, she went to Belfair with her younger siblings. Now, her parents were alive, but just those were the years of the Great Depression, and it was overwhelming for so many families. And it's truly a great Kiddush Hashem, really a sanctification of God's name. The beauty and warmth that the children got at Belfair, and they maintained a tie for decades and decades later. I mean, they were doing reunions. The family said Goldie just talked so much about people that helped her through difficult times. And it was interesting because as her children sat and spoke, some had heard of all the beautiful stories of Belfair, but her daughter shared with us that Mom confided in her that at the beginning it was very difficult because she was separated from her older siblings. You see, just Goldie and her younger siblings went to Belfair. But she overcame all of those challenges, and Belfair became a wonderful, wonderful part of her life, and it remains so with her. Those warm feelings for the institution and the people there. Heights High, she graduated in 1937, and she had mentioned, if I will, it's a Michael Charlotte, I believe, who was the superintendent at Belfair. And he was a very important person for Belfair, and he helped inspire the children there, and that he helped her through her anger at having lost, so to speak, her older siblings, having had to move out, and he helped her thrive as well as the other children there at Belfair. She worked as a nurse's aide, and when the war started, she was a supervisor, ordnance supervisor, at ordnance inspector at a munitions factory, and married Lloyd Yisroel, her husband Yisroel, in 1945. Lloyd was a second cousin, and it was a great moment for Goldie and for Lloyd. Their marriage, all their grandparents, her parents were there, and Lloyd's parents were there, and that was a very special time. Lloyd has such a beautiful name. Her husband's name is Yisroel, and Yisroel is such a fascinating name. Of course, we are the people of Israel. We are the children of Israel. But the name Yisroel actually contains each of our patriarchs and matriarchs, the first letter. So the Yud would stand for Yitzchak and Yaakov. The Sin, the second letter, for Sarah. The Reish, right, for Rachel and Rivka. The Aleph for Avram, and the Lamed for Leah. So here we have a name that contains all the patriarchs and matriarchs of Israel, and that was whom she chose to be her faithful and loyal spouse. And we also want to mention Grandma Allen, whose maiden name was Levine, was such an important part of the family. She really brought the mishpacha together and had such a beautiful Yiddish-Russian name. Mariasha, I believe, was her name. And she played an important part in helping this family contain that all that love and to overcome challenges. And Golda, right after she got married, she and Lloyd lived in Salt Lake City in Utah. And Lloyd was in the military. She really loved it there in Salt Lake City in Utah. But to come back to be with family in 1945, they came back, and Lloyd worked in men's clothing. In those days, they lived in family lived in Euclid, 1466 on Sulzer Road. Marlene, and then Janet was born 22 months later. Then Michael joined in 1956, and Goldie worked for Uncle Ted Cooper, and his bleach and soap sales. In 1957, the family moved to Willowick at 31930 Dickerson Road, and lived there for 60 years. 60 years on Dickerson Road. Golda worked very hard, as we heard, selling life insurance by debit, which means that she would visit homes and collect whatever it might be on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, collect from each person. And she made strong ties with the people that she had sold life insurance to. It wasn't just a job, it was really a relationship. And they were an important part of her family and her community that she continued to celebrate and communicate with for many, many years after. One of the great events the family celebrated was a 50th anniversary party, and she was always so proud of her children and grandchildren. And she just adored her great-grandchildren as well, and the grandchildren, and she loved playing cards with great-grandchildren and grandchildren. Lloyd passed away in 2004, and rather than become closed out, so to speak, or insulate herself, Goldie got out. She made an effort to get out and do things and did not allow Lloyd's passing to bring her down. She was important at the East Lake Senior Center. She was part of a hospice support group. She made dolls and she knitted. And there were times that she had made her own clothing. She worked at voting at the polls, at the voting booths. She worked there. And her husband was, when he lived, an important part of the community. He was a president at Ner Tamid. And Goldie and Lloyd were one of the founding congregants. Of Ner Tamid. She taught her grandchildren cooking. She was a big believer in healthy eating long before healthy eating was popular. She was very big in exercise and walking. Goldie loved music. She loved dancing. And I can vouch we would dance together sometimes when I would come in before Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. And she was, jumping around and waving with me. And we enjoyed that. And she had that most beautiful smile, as all of you know, that she was blessed to keep to the final moments of her life. Cookies, Grandma's cookies were always very popular, right? Those were something special. Buckeye necklaces, and she loved trees and flowers. And as we spoke together of the great woman that she was and the great heritage that she passed on to her family, we just couldn't help but admire how much she accomplished in her life and overcame what we would, understand as really unimaginable challenges and learned how to celebrate everything that came her way. And that's a great blessing, and I believe that has been passed down to her children. I had the privilege of spending time with them, over the years, but certainly when they came to Menorah Park on Tuesday and spent so much time with me, I deeply appreciate that, to be able to help me get a bigger picture, a better picture of their mom's life. I'm going to say this a piece from Kohelet, and then we're going to call some of the family to say a few words. Everything has its season, and there is a time for everything under the heaven. A time to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to uproot the planted, a time to heal, a time to wreck, a time to build up, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace, and a time to shun embraces, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to rend and a time to mend, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. At this time, I would ask Jonathan to come.
Thank you very much, Rabbi, and thanks to all of you who are joining us today. The Rabbi did such a thorough presentation of Goldie's life that he stole all of my stuff. And many would say, that's great, John. So this is going to be ad-libbed, other than I have a couple of cute stories that also were slightly alluded to. The wonderful thing about Goldie is, as the Rabbi said, that just about absolutely everybody who ever met her immediately was drawn to her and loved her because she radiated such warmth and passion, and there was a era of welcoming that she showed to everyone. not only her family, but also all the folks who were part of her greater family, neighbors, my brother's in-law, everyone was just, she accepted everybody so lovingly, and that's the character that she had. As the rabbi said, she had so many losses and trauma, as she was growing up. But for those who did not know that, they would never know that because she didn't carry any scars or any prejudices that were evident at all. Such an unusual person. She loved the independence of living in her home and driving for as long as she did. And as she slowed down, she was not too shy to ask for help. Ricky, Janet's husband, was her chauffeur, her gopher, her go-to guy, and he helped with her personal care when she could no longer do all of that. She stayed in her home, as long as possible, and she relied on and wasn't shy to ask for help. And I think that's great, because she would joke around while she was getting that help, so nobody felt really obligated, As she aged, promised, Lloyd and Goldie that she would never go to a nursing home. I guess they had this fear of nursing homes. But it was apparent that even with the around-the-clock caregivers that we had kind of watching over her, because she fell once or twice, when it was time for her to sell her house and go again, she did so lovingly, made it easy on us. But there are one or two stories that I think I would like to share with you. It turns out that she told each of her nephews and nieces that they were her favorite. And they, of course, always believed her. So she could be a little sneaky that way. When with her husband, for the guys, and maybe some of the women, here who play poker, there's a custom to drag the pot, which basically means every time there's money in the pot, you take a little out to pay for the beer and the food that the host is providing. Well, as Goldie didn't drive until she was like 42 or 40, something like that, because she always had Lloyd driving her around. And when she went on when they used to go grocery shopping to more than one store, because she was looking for the coupons and the S&H green stamps or whatever, Goldie used to drag the pot of the grocery money, and she would scarf a couple of bucks and bring them home, put them into their savings account. I don't think Lloyd even knew this, to fund their future needs. And I will say that this person of modest means did a terrific job of financial management, for her family, allowing her to be independent up until the last year or so that she was with us. In the food department, you have heard about the very famous grandma cookies and the tins that would be recirculated every time she came to visit. She would bring a full tin. She would take home an empty one and come back and refill it next time. But there's another little story about that, and that is that Lloyd, he had unique food preferences and dislikes. He hated wide noodles. The guy would not eat lasagna, but it was fine for him to eat spaghetti, you know. But most importantly, he was a meat and potatoes guy, and so green vegetables, So Goldie used to grind up broccoli and add it to the meatloaf. and she would say to me and to Michael, "Now don't tell your father." like okay, no one's going to spill those beans. We're all fortunate to have had this generous, humble, and tough woman to love and to love us. And now I'd like to invite up a few of the clan, Alice, Laura, Melanie, and Carla, who have something to say to us as well. Thank you.
I feel very honored to be with all of you and share some things about our grandma. I think that the things you've heard in some ways sum up to somebody who had such an incredible zest for life and a way of finding happiness and living fully. And it is the lessons of the way that she did that I see in my parents, as well as in myself on my good days and in my sisters. And when we talk about somebody's love living through us, as they, once they are no longer physically with us, we have so many gifts. And while she was so incredibly proud of all of us and our children, we also know that we're standing on her shoulders because of the strength that she had. And that really shows up for me in sort of 5 things that she taught us by the way she lived. And those are things that I think we all are so true that we heard the rabbi say them, we heard my dad say them, they're all of our known experience of her. But they really boil down to one, really owning her own health, both through physical activity and her eating. That she woke up every day, and before she got out of bed, she would do certain stretches before her feet would hit the floor, and she was active her entire life, walking, dancing, and doing things that made her feel good and healthy in her body, as well as in how she ate. And all these things she gave to us, both either by example or sometimes surreptitiously or by force. I remember as a child being very excited when the Jerry Lewis movie came on TV, and determined to watch it when my parents were away and she was staying with us, and she was like, "Get outside, it's nice outside, go outside and get fresh air." So just like before healthy eating was in, before screen time was a thing doctors told you not to do, she knew that you need to go out and get fresh air. The other is about really, I think, and one of the most important ones is just her strength showed up in a kind of self-advocacy and self-expression, that she did not let people define limitations for her, that she took control, nor did she let herself ever be in a situation where she felt or was slighted. She took control of and advocated for the things that she wanted and needed, as much so as on my wedding ketubah, it was, I guess, tradition explained to us by a rabbi that people who are not related to you cannot sign it. But she was in the room before the wedding ceremony, and she was like, "Oh, I am signing." There was no line for her, but she took a pen, she signed it, and her name is on that ketubah because it was important to her, and she was going to, show that she witnessed that moment with us. And as well as creating community, that so much of happiness is about having community that she led. As the rabbi said, people around her from Belfair were important her entire life, as the senior center in so many ways, and Temple near Tamid, as well as keeping her family close to her even when physically we've been apart. Also finding creative outlets and creativity, and we all know her beautiful crafts, from her dolls to her Buckeye necklaces to her knitting, and creative expression through music and just the way she enjoyed music. And even when the only parts of her body were dancing, she had the way that she danced in her chair. And lastly, love, just that immense amount of love that she exuded, that I think came from both her ability to love herself and have happiness, as well as then gave so much love to all of us. And that is a beautiful gift. She kept pictures, as all of you know, all around her of all of us, all of you, of her children, and that she, when we would come to see her and she would say, I always feel you with me, and that showed up. These things make people resilient when we face things that are painful and hard and loss that we've all talked about, and those lessons are lessons that I know I've been taught through her, and the lessons she gave to my parents and to me, and things that I hope to be able to give to my children in the way that they will live. And I'm so grateful for that, and grateful that
I'm Alice, the oldest granddaughter, her favorite. Just is what it is, guys. What? You okay? All right, anyway, I wanted to also say, of course, knowing Grandma my whole life, I lived in Cleveland a lot of that time, and spent a lot of time with Grandma, a lot. And like, even, when I had children and during the 15 years that we lived in Cleveland, at that point, like every Friday night we were together for dinner. In my entire life, I never saw Grandma angry. I never saw her in a bad mood. And I never heard her complain. And it just blows my mind, like, whew, that's a high standard. I was going to share the broccoli story. My dad did that, but I will say that I also saw Grandma hide broccoli, little tiny pieces under the cheese in the homemade pizza she'd made for Grandpa Lloyd, and she'd be like, "He was so funny, don't tell him." It was a big secret, and we all laughed about it. She did things her way. She didn't care about the rules, If she thought it was important, she did it, but not only for her, for all of us. When she made Buckeyes, she loved Buckeyes. I don't know where that love came from, but God, she loved Buckeyes, and she made Buckeye necklaces for everyone, and then she made extras for the people she hadn't met yet. Cookies. She had this recipe for cookies, and not only did she make them for her house, she made them for everyone. When I was in college, I'd come home and there'd be cookies, and I could take them back with me. I loved her cookies. And when she knew that something was right, it didn't matter, man. She would do it. And so, like the broccoli. Another story is my daughter Raina, when she was little, like toddler little, or maybe like 5, 6. She had like very curly hair, and she still does. But Grandma, I think, she was over, whatever, and Raina had taken a bath. And, oh no, she was dry. Okay, whatever. But I had said, okay, Grandma. Grandma was like, oh, let me brush your hair. And I said, no, Grandma, don't brush your hair. You don't brush curly hair. Well, Grandma brushed her hair, and Raina looked a little bit like a Brillo pad that had exploded. Like, okay, whatever, Grandma, okay. And when Grandma was like 87 years old, I attuned her to Reiki. I'm a Reiki master. It's an energy healing therapy. If you don't know what it is, look it up. It could help you. But anyways, I taught her Reiki. She was always open and excited about everything we were doing. And yes, she wanted to be in it with us. So I attuned her to Reiki, and she would give herself Reiki every day. And I was so proud about that. And then one day she told me that she was at the center where she goes, the senior center where she would go during the day as a volunteer. And she said to me, I was sitting with this lady, Grandma said to me, and she's like some kind of born-again Christian or something, and I just know that she would think that Reiki's the devil. She said, but that lady said to me, oh, Goldie, my knees are so sore. And Grandma said, well, just let me rub them for you, honey. And the lady said, Goldie, your hands are so warm. And Grandma said, I know, honey. She was giving her stealth Reiki. I know that's a big no-no, but it's just the funniest thing. Okay, so I just wanted to share these examples and say that, she's always with me. I'm wearing a scarf she made me in high school. And of course, a Buckeye necklace. But the things that Laura said and that everyone has said about her are all true. And the example that she has been to me and my family and my children, strong relationships and always loving, will never, ever go away. Thank you. You want to say something? Oh, okay.
Hi, everyone. I'm Evan Langholt. I'm Alice's husband. I've known Goldie for probably 26 years. We've been married for 23 years, and we dated for 3 years. And it's funny when you start reflecting back and how you knew someone, just you don't know where the memories come from, but these memories sort of come and they sort of stick in your head, and like that's the one that you're gonna share. And so the one that I've been sort of remembering is I think Alice and I had just started dating. It was not, I don't even think it was a year, and she had said to me, we're going over to my grandma's house for I think it might have even been during Hanukkah, and for dinner. And I was like, okay. And it was her whole family and other people, and this house was not big, and they had this long table that went from the attached dining room into the kitchen, and we're all sitting around this and having dinner. And then it's time for dessert, and she brings out this incredibly big frosted cake, and she starts cutting this cake, and everybody at the table is like, oh, I just want a small piece, oh, just a sliver, and it's sort of going like that. And then Goldie looks at me, and she says, and she really did not know me that well, but it's probably the first time she met me, and she said, I don't really understand people and their appetites, and I really don't get this, but you look like you want a piece of cake. And cut me this huge piece of cake. And that's when I knew this was really a special person. This is really a loving person who just, out of the blue, just took an interest in me. And it's just been, it's really been just wonderful knowing her. And I just wanted to share that.
Yes. At this time, we'd like to invite up the great-grandchildren, Raina, Sari, Eli, Aaron, Liam. Okay, and and Chuck and Harley are going to come up too.
Hi everyone, I'm Sari. I'm the second oldest. So I've always had a really great relationship with my grandma Goldie. When I lived in Cleveland until I was around 11, she came over every Friday night. We would have Shabbos together. She would always come to, all my school plays, dance recitals, everything that I did. It was really great to have her support. And then I moved to Maryland a couple years later, and I didn't really know much about her life, before she was great Grandma Goldie, until I was about 16 a few years ago. And the more I learned about the life she led before she had grandkids and then great-grandkids, the more I see how much we really had in common. She was a feminist like me, and she loved to volunteer with her community like me. She had so much love for everyone, and she was so kind and so generous. And it was like my mom said, I've never seen her upset or angry. She always had something nice to say about everyone. When I was 8 years old, I went to a Pottery Barn and I painted a plate for her because I was always loved to make her things. And, I wrote, and I painted like a little flower and I wrote, "Flowers are pretty," but I was 8, so I spelled the word pretty wrong. It had like 3 E's, 4 T's, maybe like a Q. Anyway, I gave it to her. And throughout the years, I would just see it in our house. I would visit, and it would just be there, and I would remember, oh, yeah, that's from when I didn't know how to spell. And I'm going to art school this year, so I kept at it, and I think having her support really helped encourage me. And I just turned 18 last week, and as a new adult, I really want to be like her and kind of have a life full of kindness and love the way that she did. And she really inspires me to help other people and to be there for those who are less fortunate. And she took care of everyone. She loved to take care of her family and her friends. And that's something that I aspire to be like in my life. Okay. Oh, so emotional. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Raina. I'm the oldest great-grandchild. I just wanted to share my favorite Grandma Goldie memory, which is when I was 13. I just had my bat mitzvah, and we were at Terry Macklin's for my bat mitzvah party. And the party had barely started yet. I think I was meeting a cousin who I'd never met before. And Grandma Goldie started dancing. And the next thing I know, my cousin Alana, she came and she dragged me over because Grandma Goldie was dancing and all of my friends were circled around her, dancing with her, chanting, "Go Grandma, go Grandma." And that's my favorite memory because she was just always so lively, and so positive. And, yeah.
Hi, I'm Erin, and I'm the... Which oldest am I?
You're the youngest.
I'm not the youngest.
No, you're not the
I'm not the youngest.
No, you're the third youngest.
Okay, I am the third youngest. Sorry, I cannot count right now. And my favorite memory of my great-grandma would probably be, I just always love how generous and how caring she was. She loved anyone she met. She could meet them like 5 minutes before, and she would automatically just love them. I just remember we would be like walking down a hallway, and we would pass by other people, and she would introduce all of us, and she would be like, and she would say something like, "Oh, these are my lovely grandchildren and great-grandchildren," and she was always just so nice, saying hi to everyone, always talking with everyone, always dancing, singing, and I really hope to be more like her because she is just honestly such an amazing person.
Hi, I'm Liam. I'm the 5th oldest, I think. So that's a good question. So me and my mom and my sister, who couldn't make it here today, we don't live in Cleveland or in the area. We live in DC. So every time we would come and visit, she would make her famous cookies that y'all keep hearing about. I think we still have a bunch of tins up in our pantry that hopefully don't have any more cookies in them. She would always be so thoughtful. I still have a Buckeye necklace from her that I wear every 4th of July. That she always makes stuff that's very special.
All right. Hi, my name's Eli. I don't care how many youngest I am. I'm 16, that's what you have to know. One thing I learned about my great-grandma pretty early on is that she would not waste anything. She was not a wasteful person by any means whatsoever. And so at Senior Center, she would frequent. I learned that she would get the unopened milk cartons from her friends and take them home to us. Me being an age of young, I did not know where these came from, but I was excited nonetheless because I got to take home a milk carton. And whenever I saw a dairyman's truck, I would think, oh boy, is that going to deliver milk to great grandma? I wasn't too excited when I learned where the milk actually came from, but just really goes to show what kind of a person she was. She wouldn't waste anything. She cared about everyone.
Well, whoever's coming up next can come up.
I'm just so happy for you, Golda, to have such a beautiful family, to hear grandchildren speak about you that way. Great-grandchildren never heard negative things about other people. You know, in our faith, the way we speak is so important. The Torah has so many restrictions about gossiping and speaking badly of others, and it's so sacred and godly to interpret things to the good and to speak good about other people. And the attributes that the great-grandchildren spoke about, so special, so meaningful, really, so special. I believe there was going to be another, was there going to be another speaker from the family? Yes. And Mindy. Okay.
So I'm one of the great nieces, and she told me I was a favorite. So I'm heartbroken. Aunt Goldie was always a major inspiration in my life. I call her Aunt Goldie, of course, because she liked to joke that Great Aunt Goldie made her feel too old. I remember thinking that with Aunt Goldie's laughter, energy, and love of hugs, that nothing would ever make her feel old. After all, this was a woman who volunteered in an old age home, taking care of women who were younger than she was. I don't think I can describe what she meant to me, but I can try. I remember Aunt Goldie and her sisters, my grandmother Ruth among them, talking about my grandmother's dining room table when I was young. They would tell the best stories. Mama always told me to sit quietly and listen. Don't bother them. I was too young. Just listen. And I don't remember all the family stories that they told. I really wish I did. But I do remember what it was like to be part of such a close-knit family, because we lived in Florida and it was just the four of us, and we only saw her once a year. They taught me that love is unconditional, and it didn't matter that I was only there once a year. Once I arrived, it was as if I'd never been away, and I was a favorite. So I asked too many questions, but I wanted to understand how this huge, amazing network of family and cousins came to be in Cleveland. So I'm going to delve a little bit into the genealogy. I'm going to try not to repeat what's already been said by the rabbi. But the story I was told was that was how we came to be in America. So Aunt Goldie's mother, Jessie, had a brother that she loved and followed absolutely everywhere. They lived in Smorgon in what was then Tsarist Russia, and Jessie and her brother became Zionists and attended forbidden meetings, and they were caught. Her brother was forced into the Russian army. Jessie was packed up and sent off to America. She arrived in America in 1907 on the same ship as her Aunt Etta and Aunt Etta's children. And she claimed on the ship manifest that she was 19 years old. In reality, she may have been as young as 15 when she was taken away from everything she knew and everyone she loved. And I was thinking the other day about how this event helped shape the family and how her children were raised. And I was wondering how that affected their lives when it came time to be in Belfair. So Jessie met Harry, and he had only been in America for a year. But he had also left his family at the age of 11 and traveled Europe before he came to America. And I like to imagine that they bonded over that, since they both left their families at a young age. So they got married and they had kids. And Jessie, initially, Jessie stayed in New York, and her aunt and uncle and the rest of the family went to Cleveland. And she wasn't able to join them until after she got married. So they all eventually ended up in Cleveland. And Jessie's third child, Mickey, was born in Cleveland just a few weeks after Martha's wedding. And then was Ben, and then Aunt Goldie, and then the younger siblings. And she told me that her parents worked all the time. It was the Depression, and they were poor. And she said she helped her mother take care of the store when they still had it. And then they lost the store, and they went to Belfair. But their mother would come out every weekend and spend time with them. And they managed to stay connected and create new connections in Belfair. And so she had a lot of photos of this time, and just amazing photos that I loved to look at. And she taught me about strength and gratitude, about gratitude for living in an orphanage, about being strong and doing what is right, just because it's right. And I just tried to soak up every moment of those short time that I would have with her each year, just because she was incredible. She always saw the good in things, and she taught me that each and every one of us can make a difference in the world. She was always volunteering. She was always creating, always giving Buckeye necklaces. I got one too. Always doing something to make life a little bit better, even if it was just indulging my wish to hug her way too many times. So she liked to be social, and that's basically how she got to know her husband, Lloyd. He was a cousin, and there was a cousins club. And they spent time together from childhood. And then when he went to the military, they would write to each other, and that brought them even closer together. And when he came back on furlough, he told her that he loved her and that he wanted to marry her. And she told me that her response was, "Are you serious? We're cousins." And he said that, well, Theodore Roosevelt married a cousin. If it's good enough for the president, isn't it good enough for us? So they got married. And then, well, you've heard about the rest from everybody else much better than I could ever tell it. As she got older every time I came to Cleveland to visit, I knew just where to find my Aunt Goldie. Aunt Goldie would always go to visit her sister Nora in the nursing home on Saturdays and play cards. She loved cards. And a bunch of other family members would be there too. So I would go, walk over from my Uncle Harvey's house, and I'd get to see so many people. And even as Aunt Nora's memory faded, and we knew that she wouldn't remember the visits, Aunt Goldie still came to visit. That was still important. Just every precious moment of it. And then later, I would go to Menorah Park and visit Aunt Goldie when she was there. And I knew that every time I came to visit, there would be family there, her children, and sometimes her grandchildren, just spending time with her and also with each other, demonstrating over and over that family is forever and that love is unconditional. And just watching everybody just be the people that Aunt Goldie helped them to become. That even after her memory was gone, I could still hold her hands and just be with her, just hug and smile and tell her she was special and feel her hand squeezing mine back. And knowing that just that one moment would make the world a slightly better place.
It's really a great loss for our community, for the family, for the world. Yeh Zichra Baruch, may her memory be a blessing for all of us. You know the famous story, he says, Rabbi, he says, oh, you're right. And then he says, the other one, but Rabbi, he says, you're right too. So it says, how could they both be right? You're also right. You can have many favorites. When we go in the ice cream store, we have many favorite flavors. Each one of you is unique and special, like a beautiful orchestra, each a special instrument. And may God bless you, all of us, to follow in her lofty ways, that we could realize who we are to its full potential and continue to make the world a better place. At this time, I'm going to recite Mizmor LeDavid, and in accordance with Rabbi Hirschfeld says, you know, some have the custom of saying Kaddish here. So we're going to recite Kaddish here before we leave to the cemetery as well. But I'm going to say the Mizmor LeDavid, a song of David, the Almighty is my shepherd. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai roi, lo echsar, benos deshe, yarbiteni, al mei menuchos, Yinaleni, nafshi shoivev, yancheni, v'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki yelech begetz amoves, Lo irara ki ato imodi, shivtcha mishantecha, hema yinachamuni, taroich lefonai shulchan, neged tzoreroi, di shanto v'shemen roishi, koi siri hevoya, ach toi v'chesed, Yedifuni kol yemei v'shavti b'beis Adonai liorech yomim. A song of David, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not lack. God causes me to lie down in lush pastures. God leads me beside tranquil waters. God restores my soul and guides me in righteous paths for God's name's sake. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your scepter and staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in full view of my adversaries. You have anointed my head with oil, my cup overflows. May only goodness and kindness pursue me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord for length of days. At this time, I would ask everyone to rise as we recite the Kaddish.